Coming to you live, it's the Linda Greene-Dupre Show. Join us for an uplifting hour of women's companionship and most trusted friendship. Call in and Linda will ask you, how do you feel today? Here now is our host, Linda Greene-Dupre.
Well, hello everyone. How are you all feeling today? Welcome to my call-in talk show where you ladies can call me just to have a chat. Hang out for an hour. My number is toll-free, 1-866-536-1211. So call me right now. I would love to hear from you. Now, today I have another guest sharing her story on this show. Her name is Joanne. We're going to get right into the interview shortly, but first, you have time right now to call and have a chat with me. My guest is one strong, brave, amazing, beautiful young lady, and you don't want to miss her story. It is a very heart-wrenching life story. You will wonder, how did she ever get through every day after these disturbing attacks in her life? Feel free to comment on this page, or even after hearing my guest, you can call me then and let me know your thoughts. So stay with me now. We will get to the show shortly. If you want to call me now before I get into Joanne's story and share what's on your heart today, I would love to hear from you. I have two lines open, 1-866-536-1211. And okay, so right now we are going to take a little break just to give you some information on my book and YouTube channel. When we come back, we'll get right into the interview. See you in a minute.
Linda's book, A Rescued Journey, is available at barnesandnoble.com in paperback and nookbook. See for yourself why so many women have been touched by her riveting and compelling story. But be prepared, you won't stop reading until it's finished. Order your copy today at barnesandnoble.com in paperback or nookbook. Also, please support Linda's program via PayPal at LGREENE_7 at hotmail.com. That's LGreen_7 at hotmail.com. Thank you.
Welcome back. So right now, I want to introduce you to a very courageous young lady. It had to be very difficult for Joanne to come on here and give her story. You're going to see that she is extremely brave and a very strong woman, because telling her story definitely wasn't easy for her to do. It's all about helping each other and healing yourself. So here's Joanne with her story. Hello, Joanne. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Linda, and you?
Doing good. I'm so glad you decided to tell your story on my show today. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure a lot more will appreciate it once you're done with telling everything. And how about we start off with, you're from Newfoundland, right?
I am actually. I presently reside in the Gouls in Newfoundland, originally from Carbonear, born and raised, and then I moved to St. John's to attend university, and now myself and my husband and our two children, we live in the Gouls.
Nice. I miss home. Well,
I know,
everyone
right?
Yeah, I'm here in Alberta. Everyone knows that. But so let's get right into your story, Joanne. Um, you can start whenever you're ready.
Um, I grew up in a small community in Carbonear. I have 8 brothers and sisters and 2 wonderful, loving parents. Grew up in a Catholic home, certainly. And it was just amazing growing up as far as when we went to different functions, myself and my siblings, we often went together. So there could be 5 or 6 of us from our family and then a bunch from the street. So it was just overall, it was a great time in the day in the life of the Kennedy family.
Yeah.
And then my life had kind of turned upside down, began at the age of 8 until age 14. I had become, I guess, the victim of a perpetrator in our hometown. And I had suffered immensely at the hands of him for 6 years through horrific abuse, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, physically. And it actually really took a toll on me.
Yeah.
At the age 15, my parents, 16, my parents were made aware of such. I accidentally let it slip during a cadet function. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, the police were knocking on my door, my parents' door, to let them know. At the same time, they were up at his house picking him up for rape of a minor, is what they classified it at the time. And I guess it was a long, tedious process, so it seemed, because court had been canceled several times. One, he was guilty, then he wasn't guilty, or he was guilty or wasn't guilty. It was just like a cat and mouse type deal.
Yeah.
And then finally, it did go to court in October of my grade 12 year, and he received 10 months in. The judge had ordered 10 months, and then 2/3 of his sentence had been knocked off or reduced for good behavior. So he spent about 6 months in total, I think, imprisoned. And while he was put in, we'll say, an institution to help him to learn to coexist in society, I guess,
Right.
or to not reoffend, being called recidivism. They were giving him a chance. I was in a psychiatric unit in St. John's. I had been transported from Carbonear to St. John's, where I spent 2.5 months in a psychiatric facility, because the community where I was growing up, child abuse wasn't something that people talked about often.
Right.
Or ever, I don't think, not that I know of. And at the time, I don't think anybody from my hometown knew how to handle this situation. So he was removed, and then I was removed. I returned that year in December. I hadn't started any of my grade 12 year until January of that year. And when I went back to the community, and then he was released during my grade 12 graduation, it was like nothing had ever happened. So for me, it was an opportunity. I completed my grade 12, but I moved on to St. John's to play provincial ball with Team Newfoundland, softball. And I started university. And I guess I never really looked back. My parents were still there. I would visit, but it became harder and harder, because the taunting and the making fun and innuendos made by him were just more than I could handle. So I just learned to stay away.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that must have been so traumatic for you. My gosh. We won't get into the details, of course, but that's always a trauma to someone. And then, so you didn't go to university at that time, did you, or no?
I did, actually. I moved to
did.
St. John's, got my own apartment. I got a full-time job, and I was playing softball 3-4 nights a week in the junior and senior leagues. And then I started that September. I moved in town in June, and I started university in September. And then I went down to graduate with 2 degrees and working towards my social work degree.
Good for
After
you.
graduation, I had decided to move or actually on a challenge. I took a dare to apply for a job overseas as a teacher, teaching English as a second language.
Wow. See, sometimes when these things happens to us, we try to keep our minds busy, because we don't want to think about these memories. And I think that's probably what you were doing, weren't you? Like keeping busy, keeping
Well,
going.
and yes, Linda, I grew up in like I said, in a Catholic home, wonderful
Yeah.
parents, beautiful siblings, wouldn't
Hmm.
change it for anything. But I guess a lot of the teachings over the years were forgive and forget, let bygones be bygones.
Hmm.
Um, you know, don't get stuck. So my only way of not being stuck was to remove myself from the community, because the things that were done to me and the pain, shame, and guilt that I felt were all associated with my hometown.
Yeah.
So I created a new life for myself in St. John's, where I had lots of friends, but I lived in a lot of darkness, a lot of shame and guilt, because I wasn't able to visit my family, particularly my parents, to whom I loved dearly, because they've since
Yeah.
passed.
Mm.
But I missed out on a lot. So through being a survivor, because that's what I am, physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, financially, personally, I've lost a lot of things
I bet.
at the hands of a perpetrator, and things that I'll probably never get back. I'm a work in progress, and I'm working due diligently and trying to get back to some sense of normalcy, but I don't really know what that looks like, because as I was telling you when we spoke the other day, that I left Carbonear, I moved to town, I did my university, I worked, I played provincial ball, I attended many nationals, and then I decided to take a job overseas in South
Yeah.
Korea.
Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes we got to try to let go and let God, right? Let God
Well,
to,
and you know what? I'm all about that, but I
yeah.
truly believe, and I'm a very forgiving person, and I'm an individual that always tries to find the good in others,
Mm-hmm.
despite their any problems they may have. I try not to judge. I judge thee lest to be judged. But I find it very hard to put the word child abuse and forgiveness in the same sentence. So even though I have
Mm-hmm.
to let go and let God, and I know God was with me the whole time, it's just that I struggle with, where was everybody? How come this happened? A
Yeah.
lot of questions left unanswered. And when I left Carbonear, everything got swept under the rug, never to be spoken about again. So I was left with all the pain and the suffering and the memories
Mm.
um, of what had happened. And I never really spoke about them because it was the thing to do, right?
And so you got no support whatsoever.
My family, my mother and father were amazing. They did the best they could with what they had. I have 8 siblings, like I said. My parents were very loving and giving.
Yeah.
I've seen times that my parents would take food off our table to provide it for neighbors, or
Mm.
my mother would bring back a pair of winter boots and put a new pair of sneakers or up-to-date footwear on one of the siblings. We were never cold, we were never hungry, and we were well loved. But I think the mentality back in the day was that, you know what, forgive and forget.
Yeah.
And
Nobody really
because
talked about those sort of things, hey?
absolutely. And
Yeah.
from a Catholic background, I mean, it's not something that's heard of. It wasn't for some years later that things really started to come out in through media and whatnot. But for
Yeah.
me, I was walking around with this huge secret and needing to talk about it or release some of the pain that I suffered at the hands of him. I ended internalizing it. So I just kind of I punished myself. So I was a person that was left holding the bag, I guess. And for so long, I felt like I had been the one that done wrong and not him. And it's felt that because nobody talked about it, it was never discussed, that they probably felt the same way. And I know
Right.
they know that it wasn't my fault, but
Yeah.
you often wonder, because we never spoke about it. So how would I really know how any of them felt
Right.
when
Yeah.
the secret was, like, I have younger siblings that coming up through, and I guess the hardest part for us, or for me, my siblings and his siblings all hung out together. The age, like everybody was so close in age. And so then when all this came out, it destroyed a lot of friendships. Family, like my parents and his parents were pretty good friends, and there was just a dark shadow, and I felt like I had cast this shadow even though I had done nothing wrong.
So, what was your source of strength when you went through this? Like, where was your support?
My mother was the epitome of strength. My grandmother, who was absolutely amazing. They're just strong, family-oriented individuals that, family comes first. And I think it was family, no doubt, that even though I thought they weren't on my side, they were, just that they weren't chirping it in my ear. And I was at the point in my life I needed to hear it. But I guess a lot of people didn't want to rehash or put me through, talking about it. So it was easier to forget about it than to talk about it. So believe it or not, God became my strength for a long time.
Good.
And then I got a little bit mad with God. We stopped being friends. And only because, and it took some years later for me to realize this, the poem Footprints, I live by that, because even though God may not have been with me at the time, so I thought, in actual fact, he was alongside of me and probably sat on my shoulders a lot of time. Just, there's things beyond his control as beyond mine. And you know what? He's there. We can't see him. And it was some years later I could feel his presence.
Yeah.
It's taken a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where I'd be to today, only for, that's what I did. I leaned on the Lord for my strength. And so you are getting other help as well, support from friends or family or social work or psychologists, or, because this sort of thing, you got to get professional help as well, as long, as you, lean on the Lord, the strength of the Lord, right?
Absolutely. And for me, it's been about my personal strength, because I could never have anybody have the upper hand on me, could never let you have that control. And even though my bark often was worse than my bite, I portrayed that I was this mean ogre and that I could, but deep down I was just a little pussycat. But as long as people thought I was tough on the exterior, it didn't really matter on the interior. Over the years, I've come to have different people try to help me. At the time, I wasn't willing to accept the help because I felt they didn't get it. So often I would go in and entertain the idea of seeing a new counselor or therapist, whatever, but I'd always have one shoe on and one shoe off. So if I got in and it wasn't working out or I didn't like it, I took off the other shoe and start running. Like I'm a runner. I don't like to, if I'm uncomfortable or it doesn't feel right, then I don't engage. And over the years, I did more running than I did actually standing up and fighting.
Wow. Yeah. Sounds something like what I was like. But yeah, I totally feel your pain. It was pretty tragic. And then you went, like you're saying, you went overseas. What happened there?
I went to Korea in November. I had actually applied for it's funny, but it's not funny. I applied for a job overseas to teach English as a second language, and quite exciting. But I did it more on a dare, not expecting to get the job. And so I went through the process, the application and the pictures and sending everything over, and I got offered a job. So myself and two other girls in Newfoundland left in November to go to South Korea, Daegu, to teach. And it was a population of 2.5 million people. And we had received a job at the Mancheon school. And it was great because I had two fellow Newfoundlanders with me. We were roommates. It was certainly going to be, I thought, the adventure of a lifetime. And then Christmas morning, I remember waking up. We got through it, and it was great times. We got to meet a lot of wonderful people. We did some teaching on the side and or tutoring. And Christmas morning, I'll never forget waking up, and I was sat at the table eating eggs for Christmas dinner. And when I called my parents faithfully every day, because there was such a time gap, but I always called early morning.
Yeah.
which was 12 o'clock out in Daegu would be, 6 o'clock in Daegu, it might be 12 o'clock in Newfoundland. So I had called around dinner time. I was eating eggs and they were eating their turkey, and I had a meltdown. But then reminded myself while I was there, I was going to do well, pay off some bills that I had accumulated from university and return back home with a new start and new vision. And part of my reason going to Korea was just to get away from the whole situation of what had transpired back in my hometown. And it seemed like the memories were forever. So I just needed a new start.
Yeah.
And I got that. And I guess then on New Year's Eve, myself, my two roommates, and some other Newfoundlanders, we had met after teaching. We got off at 8 o'clock. We came back to our apartment, got ready quick like, and then we headed to a bar downtown called Emanon. And I guess it was probably around 10 to 12. I got this overwhelming sense of needing to speak to my parents. So I felt, hey, I can't stay here. I'm done. I'm not enjoying myself. My two roommates were having an absolute blast. And one of the things that we as Newfoundlanders and fellow teachers over there, that if we did anything, we stayed together, we traveled together, and no one got left behind. And that particular night, I had said to my roommates, no, you go ahead and stay. There was a guy from Nova Scotia who was also going to leave at the same time. So we brought in New Year's at 12. And at 12:10, we were both in a cab on our way back home to Manchindong apartments where I lived. And Chris was in a different area of town, so he got dropped off first. And I was left in the cab by myself. I never knew anything till the cab had turned off the meter. And Linda, the thing about the cabbies over there, their cabs are similar to a police car back here in Newfoundland. There's plexiglass between the seats, between you and the driver. The doors don't open from the inside. They open them to let you out. And so there was a lot of similarities to a police car, but I was actually in a cab.
Right.
And I never knew anything till I crawled home that morning about 10 after 6. I had come to, he had beaten me up, raped me, cut me up, and left me for dead. And I was left in a gutter.
Oh my God.
And I crawled back from the area where he had dumped me, which wasn't far from my apartment. I got back to my apartment. My roommate was there. He knew I had told him what had happened. He advised me not to shower. I told myself, no, I got to shower this. And I got out of the shower, called my mother and wished her Happy New Year's. Like it was no big deal. Because I was in shock, right?
Yeah.
I managed to reach another Newfoundlander. When I got off the phone with my mother, I was in a god-awful state. It was just something out of a textbook or out of a novel, how everything unfolded. And I had called a girl, Leanne, and she had come to my apartment. And then an ambulance was called. My ajama, which is the head of my school, was called. And at the time, the ajama made a comment that if you had not been drinking, this would never have happened. Well, in actual fact, I hadn't been drinking. I think I had one beer and a shot of soju, which is beer, or form what they drink over there. But I wasn't having a good time, and I didn't want to be a damper on anybody else's spirits. So I made that decision that night to leave with this guy and trusting that he would drop me first. So I guess I assumed it would happen, and I'm sure he didn't realize anything was going to happen at the time either.
Right.
And so the Ajama showed up at my house or my apartment, and then an ambulance was called, and they took me to the first hospital where my Korean friend Casey was called because she had to be a translator, and they don't treat rape victims at this hospital. So then I was put in an ambulance and transported to another hospital. And again, the same reaction. We don't treat rape victims here in Korea. So
My gosh.
in my 3 for 3, I ended up at a hospital where my two roommates were with me, one on each side of the gurney with me, waiting for a doctor to come out and do some tests. and he tapped me on the leg and he said, you toe up, but you heal. So basically everything I had endured, and there was pictures and everything taken, and I was cut pretty bad from head to toe. I returned to my apartment, and then I was given a bunch of meds for sexually transmitted diseases, the morning after pill, and I went through a lot of horrible. I guess I never had the support there because I was in a culture where, and you have to understand, where I was there was 2.5 million people. So there wasn't a lot of English speaking people there. And the closest for me were the American base, and they were a godsend. They helped me get through it all.
Oh,
And believe it
good.
or not, every night, my bottle of vodka, which I'd take one drink, and a baseball bat was by my head. And that's how I got through every night. And then every
Oh,
morning I'd go to school and I'd teach and I'd come back. I never lost any time, and I never told my family or anybody in Newfoundland, except that night it had happened. I called an RCMP officer that I had babysat 4 years ago back in Carbonear,
mhm.
and my sister Carolyn, and it was never spoken about again. My
And
roommates were fearful.
how long did
Sorry.
you stay there
Uh,
after that?
and this was the thing, when we went there, we were obligated to, in order to get the money back for our flights there and return, we had to
Mhm.
sign a 1-year contract. And so I
Wow.
was only there in the country probably 3 weeks when this, 3 weeks, a month, maybe 5 weeks before this had happened. And the money I owed back in Newfoundland and what I would have owed to the school, I did exactly what everybody, I guess, what was expected of me, because my roommates at the time felt that if I told anybody what had happened, that they would be held accountable or blamed, because we had made the pact that we would stick together.
Mhm.
And I never held them responsible. I
No.
was the first one to say that night, stay, enjoy yourselves. Just because I don't want to be here doesn't mean you guys can't. A lot of the teachers found out, certainly, that this had gone on.
Mhm.
Very supportive. I just became a recluse. I didn't really go out much. Often my roommates would go out and then say meet up with them, but I never cabbed it after that by myself, and I
Yeah.
never traveled by myself. So if my roommates weren't intact with me or other people, I did not venture.
Yeah.
The fear was real, because now I was reliving Carbonear
Mhm.
through childhood and now into my adult years. And like, what are the chances of 1 person and 2.5 million people? Like,
Yeah.
really, right?
Yeah. It's
Little did I
disgusting.
know that,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I
Mhm.
remember when the police were involved and the Canadian consulate, they all failed me. But the godsend again were the American base. They offered as much as they could for me. Because I was Canadian, their American restrictions were a little bit tighter.
Mhm.
If I had been American, I would have got more help than I needed. But because I was Canadian, it was left up to the Canadian consulate, and that didn't happen at all. But
Wow.
I mustered through, and I had to fill out my contract because I was fearful of coming home and then having to tell everybody why. And finally, probably 8 months, 9 months after, I had contacted Lynn Burry with the NTV Evening News here in Newfoundland,
Mhm.
um, and basically gave her a blip of what had happened. And she did a story on my whole ordeal, and it was aired on NTV News, and it was called Life with Mary. And
Wow.
soon as it was aired, my mother called me in Korea and said, there was a teacher raped in Korea. Was that you? Oh my God,
Gosh.
Mom, no, why? I'm in a population of 2.5 million people.
Wow.
No more said about it than that.
You didn't tell her.
Never told her. My mother went to her grave, and she probably suspected, but it was never ever said to either one of my parents.
Mm.
And so when my mother passed in 2011, I had made the decision to blow it all wide open. And that was everything, because I needed to heal. I needed to get
Yeah.
to where I needed to go. And I wasn't getting there anytime fast because I had all these burdens that lay heavy on my soul.
Yeah.
And then that wasn't an opportune time because my dad was grieving and he was also on dialysis. And in 2015, my father passed away with an aortic aneurysm.
Oh, sorry to hear
And
that.
that was my chance to say, you know what, mom and dad are gone now. I'm going to blow this open.
Oh, so you were actually protecting their emotions, their feelings.
Yeah, because my parents really took this personal when it all happened initially in Carbonear, like they had failed me, but I didn't see that. As I had said earlier, they did the best they could with what they had.
And so you actually, what you did, you faked it all till you made it, right? Fake it till you make it.
Yep. That's
And
my motto, fake it till I make it.
yeah. But right now you're coming through, it's one day at a time, right?
Absolutely.
You have a lot of support with
Queens, Newfoundland Queens. Yeah, I joined this group. I got invited back in February to join this group. And I'm not normally the type person that would do that because over the years I've made lots of mistakes and God knows, and I've hurt many people along the way and said things that I can't take back, but it wasn't me speaking. I always felt there was something wrong, but I never knew what. And officially in 2009, I got diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and everything started fitting together because now I didn't have an excuse for my behavior, but why I would get so mad when I was out and about, never understood it. And I couldn't really accept the diagnosis. It's been last 6 months, I finally accepted it, that, hey, I have a mental illness and it's okay not to be okay. And then in February, I got an invite to join Newfoundland Queens. And honestly, it's been a godsend. I've met some amazing individuals. The top queen, Linda and Renee, Dee, Jackie, like Margot. These individuals have offered me a new perspective on life. They can't take away my owies or my pain, but they make it their mission to be there and to help if they can and at any cost. It's an unbelievable group now that's growing and rising. I think they had probably 100 initially, now it's 600 plus and climbing, right? And it basically just offers support and guidance for individuals who may be struggling, no matter what it is, whether it be trauma related or grief. You know what? There's no particular way it should look.
right.
So if you need help and you can become a part of this group, they don't turn anybody down. Like, not everybody has my story, and I may not have someone else's story. Everybody's story varies.
And our stories matter.
And our stories matter. And I now know that I matter. And
yes, you
through
do.
some consistent counseling, with Newfoundland Queens, and I have, I have a therapist that prescribes medication, and I have one that does talking, and then the other one does Reiki and yoga. And I'm going to start titration soon. I've come to realize that, God, I wish I had those people back then that I have now, or I knew then what I know now, because one thing I didn't have, or I thought I never had, was the support and guidance. So I faked it till I made it. Faked it till I was able to make it.
Yeah, exactly. And myself, I believe that God gives us that peace too, and He sends us these people. Everything is in God's plan for us, and I believe that He's doing all this for you right now. And
Linda, I believe that the universe unfolds as it should, and I keep saying to people that, they say God only gives us what we can handle, and sometimes I look and say, okay, my meter's full now, you got to stop. But adversity, I look how far I'm after coming, and how far I have yet to go, but I'm a work in progress, and I'll never be perfect, but I'm okay with not being perfect because I'm imperfectly perfect, right?
Right. And we all are. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I just strive to, if there's anything else in my life that I can do, it'll make it easier for those up and coming. God, I'd like to say that's not happening, but for anybody who's struggling or needs help, one of the things that I suffer with the most then and now is that silence is deafening. And with that, I mean, sometimes I become so immersed in my own being that I'm not able to voice or speak out loud because I don't want to drown the next person or bring anybody down. So I internalize it, and I only end up hurting myself. So if there's anything I can say to anybody today is to reach out. You know, you'd be surprised that what I went through back then comparable to what people are going through now. Times are changing, and
Yes.
and the system is getting better. I mean, I've had to learn the hard way with the system, and that's okay too, because what hasn't killed me has made me stronger.
Wow. Good words. Good words. And those are the last two questions I was going to ask you, if you had anything else to say to anyone that's been through the same thing or something similar to what you've been through, and you just answered that. So beautiful. You done fantastic, Joanne. And so um, your thing is you're working and you got your friends and you're getting social help, um, and trusting in the Lord, of course. But I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story today. It's
And Linda, I just want to
amazing.
particularly say an honorable mention, because through all this, when I returned from Korea, I met the love of my life. That gave me another reason to hide everything. And I have two beautiful children as a result. And despite no matter what I did over the years, and I've been, you know, it's been rough, he stood by me, and he's still by me. You know,
Oh,
we've been married 21 years in September coming, and
wow.
together 23. So it's been an absolute godsend
Yeah.
that I'm thankful for him and for life, and second chances.
Powerful, powerful, beautiful. Thank you, Joanne. God bless you today. And
No, thank you, Linda. And you know what? I just need you to know that there are a lot of people out there that you're making a difference in the day in the life, and that
oh,
helping people tell their stories, no matter how insignificant or significant. Everybody's life is different. Everybody's talk is different, but you're giving them the opportunity to be heard. So the silence now gets broken and words become loud. Our voices
yes.
become louder, and you're giving
Thank,
people the ability to take back the night, right?
yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that's where my heart is, is to reach out to women and get them to tell their stories so they can help others. But thank
Yeah.
you. Is there anything else
Thank
you'd like to
you.
say before I let you go?
No, just take care. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an awesome job. And please God that this message will get out to people. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, they're more than welcome. Like I said, it's a work in progress. And
Yes, it is.
with
One day at a
time,
time. Yep.
absolutely.
All right. Okay, bless you, and we'll talk to you again. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you so
You
much.
too. Thank you. God
Okay.
bless.
God bless. Bye-bye. Well, that was amazing. I'm so grateful that Joanne was determined to survive. God had other plans for Joanne. He used her story today to change someone's life and to let you know that you're not alone. If you have had trauma in your life, it is a thing we deal with every day, but with God, all things are possible. Joanne's life story was so heartbreaking, but that's not where she is today. We will suffer hardships in this life. However, hardships do not define you. Our stories can change people's lives. That's why I'm offering my time to get these stories out. So, ladies, if you have a story to tell, message me. Let's do this. And I know it's not easy to do. Writing and publishing my book was one of the hardest things for me to do. But just take that first step. Trust me, God will pick you up and carry you all the way through. In Scripture, it says, "Be strong and brave. Do not be frightened or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." Now, we still have time for another phone call, toll free, 1-866-536-1211. We're going to take another little break right now, but when we come back, give me a call.
Linda's book, A Rescued Journey, is available at barnesandnoble.com in paperback and nookbook. See for yourself why so many women have been touched by her riveting and compelling story. But be prepared, you won't stop reading until it's finished. Order your copy today at barnesandnoble.com in paperback or nookbook. Also, please support Linda's program via PayPal at LGREENE_7 at hotmail.com. That's LGreen_7 at hotmail.com. Thank you.
Well, welcome back. You can call me now if you want. I would love to hear from you. I had someone say to me the other day, how can we become a comfort to someone that's been through death, abuse, some sort of trauma? What do you say to them? Well, the best thing to do is to sit in that uncomfortable place with them and not say anything at all. You know, most people just want you to be there. They don't want to be alone. So let's be that amazing friend and just be there. Stick with them through thick and thin, right? Here's another scripture for you. Be strong and bold. Have no fear, because it is the Lord your God who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. Amen. Well, there's no phone calls coming in, so that is it for today. I hope you were blessed by the story today. I want to thank you, Joanne, so much for sharing your heart today and being so strong. So don't forget now, ladies, you can message me. Let's get working on getting our stories out there. I'll be back again May 8th. I would love to hear from you then. God bless you all. See you next time.